Can we start it? I'm sorry. So our next presentation is neurodivergence in cancer care. And we have a great team of presenters here. Melissa Levin is a social worker, senior social worker at Dana-Farber. And she's a program specialist for our neuro-inclusive oncology care and empowerment program. She provides supportive psychosocial oncology services to people who have intellectual and/or developmental disabilities and are facing cancer. She also works on system improvements to remove barriers impacting health outcomes. In her prior roles, Melissa worked as a special education school social worker, as a researcher alongside disability advocates, delivering a self-advocacy curriculum to youth across several schools and community sites in Massachusetts. She's a former Boston Children's Hospital LEND Fellow, which is Leadership, Education, and Neurodevelopment and Related Disabilities. Also presenting with Melissa are Jonathan Gardner, as a passionate advocate, motivational speaker, and cancer survivor. And we also have joining his mom, as an official ambassador for Operation House Call through the ARC of Massachusetts, a Flutie Fellow with the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism, co-chair for the Massachusetts Supported Decision-Making Coalition, and Jonathan is also a board member of the Massachusetts Advocates for Children, where he works to advance disability rights and self-determination. A homeschool graduate and Ewing sarcoma survivor, Jonathan uses his personal experiences to champion fair healthcare, accessibility, and autonomy at the state and national levels. Through his advocacy, speeches, and mentorship efforts, he is inspiring change and fostering a world where every voice is heard and all lives are valued. So we're very grateful for them presenting for us, and it will be an interactive presentation as well.
Thank you so much. We are so happy to be here. This is Jonathan and our first time presenting to a group of nurses. We've done a lot of presentations in Massachusetts and the Boston area, and we are delighted to be with all of you today. So I know we are in this after lunch time, and it is a big chunk of time that we're together, 90 minutes. Our goal is to go through content for 1 hour, and then to shake things up in some like learning groups of 2s and 3s. We'll do the learning activity, we'll do some sharing out loud, and then we'll have time for questions, discussions. Yes?
We're having a little bit of a problem hearing you back here. The microphone is louder.
Is that better?
No.
I don't know.
I think it's off. I feel like it's on.
Testing.
Try the top part.
Testing.
Any better now?
No.
You got a red light. We will use our teacher voices if technology does not work out for us. Yeah. Oh, there are more batteries. Right? Okay. Okay, while we are doing batteries, let me just be a little bit louder. Thank you for bearing with us, and thank you also for sharing that you could not hear us. That is accessibility right there. We want to make sure that you can hear what we have to share. So we'll do some content. After an hour, we're going to break out into learning activities. And again, we're just so happy to be here with all of you. So let me share what we're going to be going into. So because we want to give foundational information about disability, and particularly about the experiences of people with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities, as well as neurodivergence, we're going to talk through what are the experiences like for patients. We'll do a mix of personal stories. Jonathan's going to tell you all about what he went through. Nancy's going to offer a parental perspective. I'll share about research, and I will also share anecdotally about my experiences at Dana-Farber supporting patients who do have developmental disabilities. We want to share a ton of practical tools with you So as you are working with your own patients, you've got things that you can, pull out of your toolbox. We'll be sharing resources because there's no way to get into everything in 90 minutes. So it's like choose your own adventure. There are some websites. You'll get the slide deck if you'd like to learn more. And again, we'll have a breakout learning activity. We really want to be able to hear. You all have so much insight and experience, and we want to be able to hear from you too. We have no financial disclosures to report. I'm very grateful. The Neuro-Inclusive Program at Dana-Farber is philanthropically funded by the Nancy Larry Marks Foundation and CJL Foundation. So that's how we've been able to start to make this happen. And a core part of our grant is going out to different groups and talking about this topic. All right, I think that is that. Okay, so question for all of you, and you can do a raise your hand. Thinking generally about disability, any kind of disability, physical, mental, speech communication, deaf, blind, etc. Raise your hand if you have ever provided care to somebody who has a disability. I should see all hands going up. Okay, awesome. We're gonna come back to this question a little bit different in a couple minutes, but I think it's powerful to see that because disability is something that affects at least 25% of the US population of adults, right? This is a really common occurrence, and especially in cancer care. Because of the cancer itself, because of the treatment, you are going to be interacting, and you already do, with people who have disabilities. What Jonathan, Nancy, and I want to share today is extra consideration to think about when you're supporting people who have developmental disabilities. Oh, it's working? Awesome. Thank you. So here you guys are, oncology nurses. In case you don't already know this, I am here to tell you that you are like the most uniquely positioned people to care for the whole person. And as I was thinking about working with all of you today, I was thinking about as oncology nurses, you are constantly thinking about your patient in all of their environments. In this treatment environment when they're coming to you, and it's so fast-paced and it's so intense, but you're also thinking about what their life is like at home, in the community, and more. You are providing the most individualized and comprehensive care, and you are constantly communicating. I call it like code switching. You're going back and forth, and you know all the medical jargon, and you're then able to distill it in a way that is going to make sense to all. That is such a gift, and that is true access right there. So there are all of these skills that are inherent in you and all your work, and I'm here to tell you that if you haven't provided care to someone with a developmental disability, you have everything that it takes to be able to do that and to be able to do that well. Okay. And now that I've shared a bit, just colleague to colleague, I'm going to bring Jonathan and Nancy up. They're going to tell you a little bit about their experience, and again, really hitting home about why you all matter in this work.
So we are grateful to be in this room, filled with nurses and sharing our stories. Jonathan, these pictures show such powerful moments between you and your nurses. Can you tell everyone what's happening in these photos and what they meant to you?
Sure, just let me get to the microphone first. As a young child who happens to have autism, I needed some extra accommodations during medical visits to help with my anxiety. My nurses were amazing at finding ways to make things work for me. When I needed shots, they let me bring my Cookie Monster plush to hold, used numbing cream, gave me a blindfold, noise-canceling headphones, and even scheduled my shots on different days so I would not feel overwhelmed. They always included my mom and made sure I felt safe. The middle picture is with my pediatric nurses after a successful shot. The last picture is one of the most meaningful ones to me, honestly, out of these three. My nurse, Judy Ann, came to our home to access my port and gave me my shot when no one else could. She went above and beyond did it after a long shift just so I could have a rest at home instead of traveling back and forth to Boston. She once told me, Jonathan, we're here for your physical and emotional well-being. We all love you and we're going to work together to make you completely well. These nurses reminded me that healthcare is not just about medicine, it is about compassion. You have the power to make people feel valued, seen, and loved, even in their darkest moments. Thank you for choosing this path and for giving people like me hope.
Oops, sorry.
Not done, by the way. Let us start by thinking big picture about disabilities. These definitions were created with disability and patient advocates based on the CDC and the NIH to help us share a common understanding. They remind us that the environment plays a huge role and it can act as either a barrier or a support, especially in healthcare. Disability may be visible, invisible, or fluid. Visible disabilities we can see, like someone using a light cane or a wheelchair. Invisible disabilities are not obvious. It's things like chronic illness, learning disability, neurodivergence, or mental health conditions. Just because you can't see a disability does not mean it is not real. Some disabilities are fluid, changing over time. For example, someone with multiple sclerosis or cerebral palsy might need mobility aids on some days and not other days. Disabilities can involve the body and mind or both. It can happen at any stage of life. It is not just about the condition itself, but how it interacts with the environment. When barriers are removed and supports are built, people can thrive. IDD stands for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, which are lifelong conditions that affect learning, problem solving, and communication. Overall, disability is a natural part of human disabilities and human diversity, and understanding it helps us build communities where everyone belongs.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I'm curious who in here has heard of the term neurodivergence? Heard of it? Can you raise your hand? Cool. Sometimes I go places and there's very few hands, so it sounds like there's a fair number of people who have. So neurodivergence is a non-medical term, and it's like a umbrella identifier that's often associated with autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, a range of learning disabilities, ADHD, and there also can be more. So again, it is not a medical condition, and it's really meant to share that there's this natural diversity or variation in how people's brains work and think and process information. So I have patients who are autistic who also will identify as being neurodivergent, but not every single person who's neurodivergent is autistic. Not every single person who's neurodivergent has a developmental disability. So this is, again, it is an umbrella, non-medical. It's something that people will self-identify as being. So I'm curious again, I'll do another show of hands. Have you heard of the social model of disability? Anyone here? Oh, okay, we got a hand in the back, awesome. So really happy then to be sharing this with you. So working in a hospital or oncology environment, we are by default operating out of a medical model of disability, right? Like that is the training typically nursing and MDs are getting. And so when we think about this, it's a way of conceptualizing the problem exists within the person. The problem is what needs to be fixed. So if a person, let's say, has a spinal cord injury, they're not able to walk, that's a disability, the spinal cord injury. And the solution as well, can we get some devices, medical treatment, rehabilitation? The social model of disability is when we think about how there are all these barriers or facilitators that are created by society and systems and that barriers are things that can be modified, that can promote access and inclusion. So perhaps here's the same person we're thinking about that has a spinal cord injury, and they're trying to get out to work and participate in the valued life experience, and they can't get into the building, not because they have a spinal cord injury, but because there are only stairs, there isn't a ramp, there also isn't an elevator. So it's this shift in perspective about wherein lies the problem and what is the interaction between the person and the environment. And I think, again, as nurses, you have this ability to be able to navigate these different worlds and bridge it together. What's happening medically, and also what is that person's environment like? What can help them be able to access what they want and need to access? Okay, I'm gonna pass back to Jonathan, who's gonna go deeper into what does it mean that people are multidimensional?
So, this slide reminds us that people are multidimensional, and we all have strengths, needs, and experiences that make us who we are. Disabilities is universally part of diversity. It touches every community across race, gender, age, and background. Everyone's experience is different, but we all deserve to be seen as a whole person, not just by a diagnosis. One important part of being seen as a whole person is how we make decisions. Some people make decisions on their own. Others use support decision-making. It's an alternative to guardianship where the individual has trusted supporters who help them understand options and talk through their choices. But the final decision is still theirs. I use support decision-making in my own life. It helped me think through big choices about my work, health, and my future, while keeping my independence. When I was treated for sarcoma, it became a life-saving. There was a point when I wanted to stop treatment. My mom, as my support person, did not take over. She helped me talk with my doctors, make a plan that cared for both my body and mental health. That choice gave me the strength to keep going. Being multidimensional means being part of your own decisions and being supported in ways that build on your own strengths. And speaking of that exact mother.
So this slide really captures exactly what we lived. Disability and decision-making aren't one size fits all. People have varying needs that can change depending on stress, environment, health, and cancer was a powerful example of that for us. When Jonathan was diagnosed, we were already using supported decision-making. His doctors had never heard of it. I had explained that I wasn't his guardian. I was a support person that he chose. When he wanted to stop treatment, my role wasn't to make that decision for him. It was to help gather information, break it down, and make sure he understood his options. That process and that trust is what helped him make his own informed choice to continue treatment. Supported decision-making doesn't just promote independence, it builds collaboration, respect, and in Jonathan's case, it truly helped save his life.
So I want to share some feedback that several of my patients, so I do a lot of co-creating of materials and training with patient advisors at Dana-Farber, and I want to highlight these points since they're not here in the room, but want to elevate their voice. So like Jonathan and Nancy have shared, disability is a really important part of identity. It's not just a diagnosis and not something to be fixed. So disability can be really powerfully linked to culture and pride, whether it's the deaf community, the autistic community, the neurodivergent community, etc. So there are so many positives that can be associated with this sense of identity, this sense of belonging that people who really get it. Also, another consideration is that in certain cultures, in certain countries, in certain communities, disability is extremely stigmatized. So you may also have some patients or some families for whom it doesn't feel safe to share. that they have a disability or that they have access needs. And so I highlight this again because it's so multi-dimensional, and it's all about like really getting to know each person and what does that experience of disability mean to them. The one other thing I want to share from a couple of patients is that disability and health, in their point of view, are not the same thing. Being disabled does not always mean being sick. Patients with disabilities need the same preventative routine care as anyone else, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Okay, so now I want to share, when I first got to Dana-Farber, again, I transitioned from being in special education and community-based research to coming into oncology, which was a new world for me because my role had been supporting neurodivergent families where the parents had been diagnosed with cancer. And we were trying to help their kids of all ages be able to process and cope with what they're going through. So I took a look into what exists in the research. And so when we compare people with intellectual and or developmental disabilities with folks who don't have those disabilities, there are inequities to accessing screening, preventative care, and this really impacts early detection. So people who have IDD present at later stages when they are coming to all of you. Just anecdotally, a majority of my patients are coming in at stage 4. Research also shows that people with IDD experience treatment delays, not just starting treatment, it can happen throughout for several reasons I'll detail below, have higher rates of adverse medical events, poor pain management. There's a study that came out last year about patients with IDD having worse outcomes after surgery, more complications, longer stay, and then having higher mortality for breast, lung, and colorectal cancers. So I know the text is a bit small, but I'll say these studies are from like 22 on up. This is very, very recent work. There is still a ton that needs to be looked at to understand like why is this happening. Some of the factors that are coming through in these studies are first inaccessible equipment and facilities. So think about for patients who, let's say, have a physical disability, are they able to have a comprehensive exam done? If they are a wheelchair user, how are you planning ahead for that patient who's coming in? Barriers to accessing, understanding, and acting upon information. Think about this like health literacy lens. Is the information that we are providing, is it accessible? Do people know how to find it? Is it understandable? Can they make sense of it? And is it actionable? Are they going to be able to follow up on those teaching sheets or, okay, here's the steps you're going to do when you get home? There are sensory sensitivities that really can complicate the experience for people with developmental disabilities, for folks who are neurodivergent. Sure, you know it in your settings, the light, the sound, the taste, the touch, oh my gosh, just such a sensory overload. And then there's also communication challenges. This can be, let's say it's someone who is non-speaking or someone under extreme stress may become non-verbal, how they're sharing. Also on the receptive side, if an individual is able to follow along with what you're sharing, follow along with that information. A couple studies have noted there's a lack of disability training in medical schools, in nursing schools, from social work schools. So as one more question to all of you, did any of you get specific training in nursing school, like about disability? Did that come up? I see, yeah, like a little bit, a couple hands. Yeah, so one of the roles Jonathan and his mom have in Operation House Call, they go out to Harvard and Tufts and Simmons, and they're doing this curriculum of lived experience teaching current students. So lots here. Okay, I'm gonna pass it back to Jonathan.
Thank you, Melissa. This slide is about accessibility and accommodations, which are two things that are connected but a little different. Accessibility is proactive. It means designing spaces, programs, and information from the start so everyone can use them. Things like ramps, captions on videos, or clear visual signs help not just people with disabilities, for everyone. Accommodations are adjustments made when someone needs extra support to participate fully. They can be physical, like a quiet room, or adaptive equipment, or non-physical, like extra processing time, language, or scheduled breaks. The goal of both is the same, to make sure everyone has equal access, equal opportunity, and can participate fully in whatever they are doing. For healthcare environments to be accessible, it means that everyone, regardless of disability, health condition, or support need, can use and benefit from the spaces, services, and information equitably and with dignity. And I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thank you. So I am curious if any of you can think of an example of a accessibility practice that you have where you work, or you can think of some accommodations that helped for a particular patient of yours. So take a moment to think about that. You know, accessibility is this whole idea of like universally designing an environment and experience that's going to be usable by everyone. And accommodation, that's often that more reactive, okay, we know there's going to be a barrier, here's how we can address it. If anybody might feel comfortable raising their hand and sharing. Yes?
So our cancer center was built a long time ago, and now we have bariatric wheelchairs to accommodate people who need them. They won't go in the exam rooms, the bathrooms. So how do you toilet for patients? And we're finding we get several staff members to ambulate as best we can with a walker. They can't get your wheelchair in there to transfer.
Yeah, so that is right, a real
It's
major
renovation to make these doors bigger.
yeah, major structural barrier that you have a patient who needs to use a bariatric wheelchair and that wheelchair does not fit through the doors. Huge barrier. I'm curious, are there any particular rooms that have been modified to be the sizing that would allow for the wheelchair to go through?
We're part of the hospital as well, so we have a stretcher bay for our inpatient units.
Yeah.
And we move up the beds, and we pull the curtains to examine the patient in there if they have to, and then we'll put them on a stretcher instead of an exam table. It's not ideal, but.
Right, not ideal, but you're finding a way to make it work. Yeah, I know a lot of these buildings are older and there's navigation issues with mobility equipment for sure. I think I saw a second hand. Yeah.
I have one where it would be another accommodation. Similar thing, we have a patient being treated who cannot sit in a chair. She can't sit in a wheelchair, so she has to be in a stretcher or a bed. The big problem is that our particular part of our medical building doesn't have fire doors. So actually it's like we literally cannot treat this patient where we are because we can't just shut the fire doors, we can't get her out of the building safely. So we have coordinated with our endoscopy, and so we actually literally physically treat this patient in an endoscopy bay because she can be, in a stretcher and of course safe, fire doors if there's a fire, because the main hospital has that, but just a huge barrier because, it just takes so much more effort for the staff and everything like that. And, with this patient as well, what she has to go through even just to get there is huge. So we're, accommodating, but yeah, definitely a big physical structural barrier.
Yeah, and I would say, as nurses, you're aware of these things, and so start to notice and to speak up to your relevant leadership, because often it's not just one patient. This is happening with multiple patients, and so a systematic approach must be taken to adequately care for them and also support you all when it comes to your logistics if you're managing multiple patients at a given time. So another hand, yeah.
Just thinking about virtual visits, would that be an accommodation? In some cases, that would be a discrimination, or just because people didn't have the person's ability or opportunity to
Like
interact.
offering virtual in place
Offering
of
virtual visits
in
where
person.
possible.
Yeah, I've had this come up with patients where we think about, is it a visit that must be done in person? And if it must be done in person, then of course we're gonna get them in. They need labs, they need, you know, hands-on. But if it's a visit that doesn't need to be done in person, being able to access it virtually, I can tell you feedback from my patients is that's so much more accessible if it doesn't have to be done in person. And I think there's that fine line of having to think about, is this something that we must have eyes on, hands on, you know, the equipment here? Yeah, it's a really important consideration for sure. Okay. Yeah.
I think we did, that was a freestanding radiation department. We used or had an neck chair, just like a dental chair.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes, so just, we're gonna have stirrups on that, so we can do all the things on it. We'll lower it, raise it up, and, you know, it's not a flat mat. You know, you have a little more play. Is it?
So thinking about equipment you may use for one particular population, but how can it be applied to other people who may also benefit? Awesome, I love all this thinking that's happening. So we're gonna switch a little bit from big picture accommodations, what's accessibility, to now just some communication best practices. And I'm guessing all of you are doing, you know, most if not all of these, but Jonathan and I, along with the other patients who I work closely with, wanted to make sure we highlight these. So a big thing is thinking about language. Person first or disability first language. Like, Jonathan, when you talk about yourself, how do you talk about autism?
For me, I just say I just happen to have it because it's just a part of me, like how my arm and leg is.
Yep, so you're like, I just happen to have autism, it's a part of me. I have patients who say, I am an autistic person, and they want their record to reflect that. This is like really a deeply personal choice. So if you have a conversation with your patient about this, or a colleague has, it's important, like, get it in the chart the way that that person most resonates with. That is so validating to have that written as such. Talking directly to the person with a disability, even if there is a care partner present, even if there's a mom who's present, or I have a lot of patients who also come with group home staff members. It's like we are talking to that individual person, not the third person, like they are there in that room, talk to them. If you can, positioning yourself at eye level to the person, especially if you have a patient who is a wheelchair user, if you're able to take a seat, or if there isn't a seat in there, you know, grab a stool, bend down, that just really helps with like the vibe and the power differential to be in that same level if you're able to do so. And a couple of my autistic patients want to make sure I share that just because someone's not giving you eye contact doesn't mean that they're not listening. There is so much to be processing when you are in an oncology setting, and for some people to be listening to you and making eye contact is like overload. So they may be fidgeting, maybe, you know, pacing a little bit, still listening. Encourage use of assistive technology. If you have a patient who uses assistive tech for communication, like sometimes people feel stigmatized about it, like really try to be welcoming about that, because that is, for some people, their source of communication. It's not an add-on, that can be the communication. And then again, just providing accessible, understandable, actionable information. I'm going to share a couple of examples with you in a few slides and some resources you can refer to. Being mindful of volume, pace, and tone. So using, just like you would, like a normal volume, unless somebody needs you to speak up, you can speak up. But I hear from a lot of my patients, somebody might be yelling at them because they think they need it louder, and it's like, no, 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 my processing speed just takes more time. You don't have to yell at me. So thinking about volume, pacing, if a patient tells you that they're a slow processor, or that they have too many tabs open in their brain at a given time, like pace things out, get a sense of like, am I going too fast? Does this feel good for you? You can let me know if you need me to slow down. And tone, you know, talking to people like you would to any other adult, even if they have an intellectual disability, they're an adult. Okay, and now, yeah, Jonathan's going to tell you some more about his awesome nursing experiences.
This slide is about how important it is to build trust and rapport between patients and healthcare providers. Before I move forward with this, quick raise of hands. Who here thinks trust is very important for any patient, regardless of disability or anything, to have with the doctor? Yep, that's what I expected. Thank you. Thank you for not having me be very awkward about this. But for me, as a patient, trust is everything. How can I trust you with my life if I don't feel comfortable or understand what you're going to do to me? Communication is clear communication helps me feel safe and calm. When I first met a healthcare provider, I really appreciated it when they talked directly to me, not just to my mother. My mom is my support person, but I'm the patient. When a provider looks at me, asks me questions, and explains things in a way that I can understand, it shows they see me as a part of the team. The photo on the slide is actually me with my nurse, David. He did something that made a big difference for me. He taught me a countdown strategy to help reduce my anxiety when getting shots or blood drawn. The simple strategy helped me manage my fear, and it is something I still use today whenever I need a shot or blood work. What David showed me is that good communication is not just about explaining, it's about connection and trust. When providers take the time to understand how processing things, it helps me stay calm, engaged, and cooperative. Even if a patient can't verbally communicate, it is still important to speak directly to them when receiving the caregiver role. That is how real trust and relationships are built, one respectful conversation at a time. And I guess instead of waiting for my call, you're just coming up right now.
Yes, I am. Jonathan, thank you.
Hey, we have to bring some light to this.
Yes. So, as Jonathan's mom, support person, and caregiver during his cancer journey, I can tell you that trust and flexibility from providers can make all the difference in whether someone receives care or walks away from it. When Jonathan was going through treatment, there were times when he used a wheelchair, and simple things like making him know it was okay if his body was too tired to walk made him feel respected and safe. And when he was using a wheelchair, having providers match his gaze, sitting across from one another whenever possible, was a non-verbal way to convey respect. Non-traditional approaches were what made care possible, like allowing him to take a break, recording information to review later, or have me take notes for him when he was too tired or overwhelmed. Those adjustments weren't just accommodations, they were really trust builders. They showed him that the medical team valued his needs, his voice, and his relationships with his caregivers. One question that I wish more providers would ask is, what's the best way for us to get information to you? Are you someone who learns best by hearing things out loud, by seeing things in writing, by having pictures, or some combination? We can figure this out together. It sounds simple, but it opens up communication, helps patients process information in ways that work for them, and can prevent misunderstandings that can cause a fear of shutdown.
So I'd love to share a resource with all of you, and this is online. It's called One Idea Per Line. It's a framework developed by autistic people out of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. And they have an awesome manual, they have examples of how can information be taken and then distilled into like really understandable. They break it apart in two ways: plain language, which is clear, straightforward, everyday words, and easy read, which is simplified, a lot of visuals, and structured to maximize understanding, because we have to think about, there's a lot of hidden meanings, things that aren't quite spoken that we may assume, oh, people are gonna understand how to do this, and that's where it's like, no, we can't make any assumptions. We gotta be concrete, we gotta make it understandable. So I find this to be an awesome resource to get things started if you're thinking about Maybe teaching materials you have are quite complex, even if you're trying to get it to like a 4th through 6th grade reading level, how do we make it even more plain language? So just as an example, thinking about a direction of administering medication orally twice daily with meals. That probably makes sense to a lot of people in this audience. To folks who are neurodivergent, that may be a combination of just too many factors. So a plain language of this could be take this medication by mouth 2 times a day with food, just a bit simpler. And then if we're going another layer into even more plain language, it's like one conceptual idea at a time. You're gonna take, or if somebody understands swallow, 1 pill in your mouth, do it in the morning and at night, take it with food. So I work with a lot of nurses when it comes to my neurodivergent patients, especially folks who live by themselves. And we wanna be making sure it's the right medication at the right time. We do a lot of work simplifying things like this. And speaking of AI, which came up in the last session, I used AI to build out in plain language and an easy read what are the common side effects of chemo. So we got a column that describes the jargon, right? All these phrases you guys know so well. If you transfer it to plain language, like gastrointestinal disturbance becomes stomach problems. Take it a step further, your stomach may hurt or feel upset, and then we're putting an emoji in too. So I have found this is a fun way of using AI. I always double check, right? We learned that earlier. You need to double check that the information is medically accurate. But if you need a kickstart to thinking about plain language, you can put the prompts into ChatGPT or your institute's AI to please turn the jargon of side effects of such and such medication into plain language and into easy read. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from patients that it's helpful to have this. And Jonathan, you're going to talk some more about visual aids? Awesome. I'm going to click through so all the info's up here. Yeah.
All right, now, so visual aids are something that nurses can partner with in creating with their patients. Consistent, give me a second. Consistent symbols instead of abstract metaphors often help people who are neurodivergent better understand what to expect. Focus when there is so much information coming at them, and retain it afterwards. Pictograms or icons, simple, universal, recognizable images like a pill container for medicine, a water droplet for hydration, step-by-step diagrams for tasks like ingesting insulin injections, physical therapy exercises, or taking blood pressure at home. Color-coded charts for medical timing things. For example, green for morning, yellow for afternoon, or blue for evening. Consistent metaphors instead of abstract metaphors. And Melissa, we were talking about this earlier, and I think there was something that you could add to this actually.
And you stay right up here, Jonathan. You're gonna be next again. I'm wondering, do any of you use Medication? Now, have any of you heard of Medication? Ooh, okay, so sorry, it's a little bit small, so let me point. This bottom picture I screenshotted from Medication, which Dana-Farber's pharmacy has access to, and it takes medication information and it breaks it down into some pictures, so like morning, noon, night, and then just gives more visual supports around taking medication. Medication is most often used by people who speak English as a second language, and you can also have it in their preferred language. But I have found that a lot of my patients do well with these medication teaching sheets as well. So you can check in with your sites. Maybe you have access to this education. All right, Jonathan, back to you.
Actually, it's back to my mother.
Back to Nancy.
How much?
Oh, no, you got it.
Visuals were absolutely essential for helping Jonathan process what was happening during treatment, and the key was creating ones that aligned with his interests. For example, I made a medication chart that featured Cookie Monster, since Cookie Monster had always been comforting to him. We also created a chemo countdown using one of his favorite video game characters, Kirby. And for radiation, we came up with Super Cookie, a superhero Cookie Monster with a shield, and he would place the sticker of the shield on each session he completed. And actually, this was, you can hold that up and show them, that was his last day of radiation, which made him a matching shirt for his last day. Yeah, it's sweet. Those visuals weren't just cute. They gave Jonathan something familiar to focus on, reduced his anxiety, and helped him connect emotionally to the goal of getting better. They made medical routine something he could understand and take ownership of. Looking back, if I had known then what I know now, I would have created even more social stories about what happens when you have to call 911 in the middle of the night, what to expect when the ambulance comes, and visuals to reinforce that home was still safe, especially when predictable space can often become very chaos. For people who are visual learners, visuals can transform fear into understanding. When they reflect the person's own world, their humor, their favorite characters, their interests, they don't just explain the process, they empower the person to move through it with confidence. And I had made up just a few examples on the board, so like feel free after to come and look. There's a medication chart, there's a lot of growth mindset quotes on there and whatnot. And it just really helped Jonathan stay focused, and we're big proponents of growth mindset, and just got us through a lot of tough days, so.
And Jonathan, want to do the clicker?
Oh, it's your turn.
Like this. No, it's just easier to do it like this, because the mic wants it. Sorry, communication disabilities up here. But this slide is about health literacy, which is a key part of good healthcare communication. The CDC says personal healthcare literacy is how well someone can find, understand, and use health information to make decisions. Organizational health literacy is how well healthcare systems make that information accessible and fair for everyone. My nurse, Christina, really understood both. She realized the traditional smiley pain chart did not work for me because, let's just say, I found it hard to connect with. Instead, she made a personalized pain chart based on something I love, video games. She asked how long I could play before pain made it too hard, and that became my pain scale. It might sound small, but it made a huge difference. I could finally explain how I felt without frustration. Nurse Christina still uses this approach with me and takes my interests and turns medical information into something that makes sense for me. That is what true health literacy looks like. Meeting patients where they are and give them the tools to understand what they are experiencing, what choices they are, and to fully take part in their own care. Mother?
From a parent's point of view, what Nurse Christina did was extraordinary, because she understood that health literacy isn't just about reading or explaining information. It's about connecting it to the person in front of you. I had seen so many providers hand Jonathan traditional tools like the smiley face pain scale that just didn't make sense to him. He couldn't relate to it, so he couldn't communicate how he really was feeling. Christina recognized that right away. Instead of asking him to fit into a system that didn't work, she built one around him. When she created that video game-based pain scale, asking how long he could play before pain became too much, she gave him language that was meaningful to him. Suddenly, he could share what he was feeling without anxiety or confusion. For me, as his mom, that moment showed what true partnership and care looks like. Christina didn't just adapt to tools, she respected Jonathan's way of understanding and interacting with the world. That's what good health literacy should look like. Not only making medical information understandable, but making it personal, relevant, and empowering. When providers take that step, they don't just improve communication, they build trust, and that changes everything for the patient and the family. And she is just the best. So I'll just say that.
So this is a slide that I share across all different conferences and role types, and I'm going to tailor it to nursing folks. But the general ideas matter across all disciplines. So thinking about what accommodations may support you as you're supporting your patients, what are the tools? First thing, support people. You heard all about, Jonathan, his support person, his mom. If people have a support person that they want to be with them, please, to whatever extent that person can be present, allow them to be present. And they may have support people who are not physically close by, and if that's the case, you could explore, would they like to have somebody call in and listen? Maybe that person will be a scribe or Zoom in. What I hear time and time again from my neurodivergent patients, whenever possible, a consistent assignment of nurses is everything. I have a patient where she has a particular routine when it comes to heat packs and cold packs and narrating touch before doing the blood draw. And so there's several nurses who know that. If nurse A isn't on site that day, we got nurse B, we got nurse C. But just taking that time to make sure we've got familiar people, we've got this plan is huge. When it comes to timing, there may be certain times of day that work best for someone in terms of their processing, in terms of their ability to really focus or decreased anxiety. If your system can make it work, I always suggest allocating some extra time. If you do have a patient who's got a developmental disability or a patient who's neurodivergent, just to have that cushion for processing time. And if you have a patient who may be struggling with going from one room for the blood draw to the next room that's the waiting room, to the next room to meet with the nurse, to the next room for infusion, think about, is there any way that you can decrease all those transitions that are a lot to process, and can you centralize it to maybe one room or maybe 2 rooms rather than 4 rooms, if that may be possible. I also have patients that share feedback if clinic is not too busy and they can be pulled back from the waiting room, if all the noises in the waiting room are overwhelming and there is a spot that they can just pull back and have some quiet, that is super helpful when possible. Flexible movement, I think Jonathan spoke earlier that moving around is something that's supportive to him on an emotional level, on a processing level. Talking in advance with a patient, if the sensory experience is going to be a lot, brainstorming, do they have items that are comforting that they can bring in from home? Are there things that keep their hands busy that they can pack and bring in from home? Do you have weighted blankets or a warm blanket? These are things to explore with your patients. And additionally, narrating any touch, I hear time and time again as extremely helpful, trauma-informed. Having visual aids like Nancy shared, people learn in different ways. If you need something visual, a picture, here's what's about to happen, to have that. And then also on the nursing side of things, if people struggle with the texture of, let's say, the gowns, can they wear a t-shirt from home? Can they wear layers? If a medical bracelet on their wrist is just gonna drive them it's too much, can the bracelet just be on their lap instead of on their wrist or on their purse or backpack? Numbing cream, I keep hearing numbing cream is magic for people who have touch sensitivity. Heat and cold, again, exploring with each person, what really feels best for them. Weighted blankets, and then there's definitely times where people also benefit from anxiety medications if it's just overwhelming amount of stimuli and such. And I'm gonna pass it back. I think this is my last pass back to Jonathan and Nancy, and then we'll transition into our learning activity right after.
Now, I'm going to tell you about personalized care. Personal care personalized care matters to me because everyone is different, and I need doctors who understand how I communicate and what helps me feel safe and calm. For example, I have a sensory integration disorder, which means I experience a lot of sensory sensitivities, especially during my cancer journey, and still today. Here are some accommodations that really help me, and they might help your patients too. As I said before, I like a countdown before shots or blood draws. My nurse David taught me this, and it helps me prepare and stay calm. I also bring headphones and sunglasses because the waiting rooms can be loud and bright, and those tools help me focus. Sometimes I need to walk around to process what is being said. It's not restlessness, it is just how I organize my thoughts. Giving patients space to do that really helps. And then there is my Cookie Monster. I was planning to do something else, but I just decided to do this instead. But during my treatment, my father gave it to me, and my mom sewed a real medical port into it, just like the one I had in me. I brought it to every visit and helped me understand what to expect and feel safe. Cookie Monster was a tool that helped me feel safe during my treatments. That was my version of personalized care. But everyone's personalized care looks different because what helps one person feel calm and safe might not help someone else. I like you to think about your own environment when patients come in and how can you make it feel safe and personalized for them. And Mother?
With Jonathan's sensory integration disorder and cancer, we always had to expect the unexpected. I learned fast to keep an emergency evening bag packed at all times, not just with medical essentials, but with sensory supports like his headphones, sunglasses, and of course Cookie. Those items were not extras. They were lifelines for comfort and regulation. Looking back, I wish I had created an emergency checklist to go with that bag. Things like what Jonathan might need first to feel grounded if I was not right beside him yet when the ambulance came. Because sometimes in those chaotic moments, I knew he might be alone for a few minutes before I could be in the ambulance or hospital room with him. That kind of preparation, both practical and emotional, helps reduce panic for everyone. It creates a predictability and trust for the patient, and it reminds providers that sensory regulation and emotional safety are just as essential as medical stability. When hospitals and families plan together for those details, we aren't just responding to emergencies, we are preventing trauma and building care that truly sees the whole person.
All right, and we are right on time. So I'm guessing some people may need like a little bit of a movement break. We're going to be doing a learning activity. We'll be passing around a patient scenario. And you can work in like 2s or 3s or 4s, whatever kind of naturally works for your seating. And you'll read over the scenario together. And there are either 1 or 2 questions at the bottom of the scenario for you to think about. And after 10 minutes of the reading and brainstorming, we'll come back together. Would love to call on people if you're comfortable sharing out loud. What are your ideas? What are your considerations? And these